Well, as always, big things are happening on Capitol Hill, and whether it's ISIS or whether what's going on in Jordan, what's going on in Obamacare, what's going on in taxation. A man that has perspective on this and so much more is Congressman Brad Wenstrup of Ohio. Brad Wenstrup, welcome again to the Bill Cunningham Show.
Thank you, Willie. Good to be with you today.
First of all, give me your take on what's happening in the Middle East with ISIS and ISIL. I cannot recall a more breakdown of American foreign policy, whether it's Libya, Egypt, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen. The world is aflame right now. I understand that Merkel and others, leaders of Germany and France, Hollande, have flown to Kiev to meet with Putin, to talk to them. The president says that he's going to follow the lead of Jordan. We're now behind Jordan. Just give me your sense as a conservative U.S. congressman, the level of foreign policy engagement we have under this president.
Well, as a member of Congress and as a military man, it's very confusing as to what our foreign policy actually is. I am pleased to see what Jordan is doing. We had the King of Jordan here just a couple of days ago. He went home right after he met with us, as that pilot obviously met his untimely death in a very evil way. But he spoke to us, and he is ready to go, and he's recognizing that, one, he wants American help, but two, he says, it's our problem in our area of the world, too. We've got to take care of it. And what amazes me with this whole thing right now, Willie, is there's supposedly 60 nations in this coalition.
Yeah.
What are they doing?
Oh.
What is it doing? And if our objective is to get rid of ISIS completely, is to eradicate them, our strategy and our means aren't matching that.
What about a declaration of war, which is something we've not done since 1941? This is a decades-long, maybe century-long struggle we're going to have against Islamic extremists, and we can't have a war with an entity that we can't use their name and we can't define. One can only imagine if FDR or Truman said, we're not at war with the Nazis. No, that would be unfair to Germans. We're at war with extremism headed up by Adolf Hitler. The people then living would look at FDR or Truman like they were crazy. I never thought I would ever compare anything happening in the world to what the Nazis did. But the ISIS and ISIL, giving them time, give them Iraq, take over Syria, maybe Afghanistan or Pakistan with al-Qaeda and the Taliban. We're looking at a worldwide phenomenon in which it is a culture of death. And when they get weapons of mass destruction, they will use them against us or Western Europe. Do you think a declaration of war against Islamic terrorists makes sense?
Well, we certainly have to address it. If you look after 9/11, when I saw George Bush address the nation, I said to myself, this is a 30 to 40-year deal. We have to change a generation of thinking. And then, of course, I served in Iraq. We liberated that nation, and now we've left it. And look what has happened. And we have to engage this on a global effort. It is good versus evil. We have to decide really if we're serious about this. And we have to talk in realistic terms, to your point. You can dance around the words. Let's call it what it is. This is the most evil entity. It is a section of a religion. Hey, I worked in Iraq with Muslims all the time, many peaceful people. That's what most of them are, but this is not that. And we've got to face the facts on that.
Congressman Wenstrup, there's only a handful of congressmen who are doctors, who are veterans, and who are congressmen. So when you were in Iraq and all hell was breaking loose, al-Qaeda in Iraq and the terrorism going on there, what were the feelings of average Muslims, average Iraqis about what was happening to their country?
Well, they did feel to some degree that we brought our war with al-Qaeda to their nation, and I can't say that they don't have a point there. But at the same time, we liberated them from a very evil dictator, and that they understood as well. So the good came with the bad. The insurgency was more the problem. And basically, you had people that learned to trust the American soldier more than they did their own government. And that's what we perceived over time. When Petraeus moved the troops out in with the people, the relationship got much better. And, to this day, I think they trust the American soldier more than they do their own government.
Did we win in 2011? Obama made a campaign promise in 2008 to get us out of Iraq, get us out of the wars. And then in 2011, when the last combat soldiers left Iraq, in fact, all soldiers left Iraq, he gave many speeches in which we won, they lost. The campaign in 2012 was based upon he got us out of wars, got us out of Iraq, got us out of the wrong war, and we won. What happened from the time Obama declared victory in 2011 to today in Iraq?
Yeah, Joe Biden even said that the victory in Iraq is a feather in the cap of the Obama administration. But he didn't learn from history what can be successful, which is leaving some troops behind and building a relationship and actually developing an ally. And just like Germany and Japan, you had to change a generation of thinking. And we didn't do that. And now you saw the vacuum that was created, and look what has come in, a worse enemy than we've ever seen in my lifetime.
Is there any doubt in your mind, Congressman, that if Obama left behind a tripwire, maybe 10 to 15,000 American soldiers, special forces, certain satellite capabilities, and insurgency training, that ISIS would never have come into Iraq if that was the deal?
I believe so. I think it would have been a great deterrent, and I can guarantee you that the Kurds would have been more than happy to welcome us and leave our troops up in their region of the world. They've loved us since 1991, since we've kept them safe from Saddam Hussein. And so we missed that opportunity. It's water under the bridge now. The question is, what are we going to do? I heard in one hearing someone say something like, oh, let's be perfectly clear. This isn't going to look like the first Iraq war. And that upset me tremendously. And I got up and I said, let me make something clear on behalf of those that gave their life and limb in Iraq. We want it to look exactly like the first Iraq war because we won that war. We won that war and we let it go. So the question is, if we can get to that point again, what are we going to do? But I do agree that we need to do this with a broader coalition of the neighbors in the region, and they're starting to get it. And what's happened recently with that pilot has brought Jordan together. And they have been an ally of ours, and we need to continue to be there with them right now.
Are you uncomfortable with leading from behind? In Libya, we led from behind. Look what's happening in Libya. In Egypt, we helped dispose Hosni Mubarak. Look what's happening now in Egypt. In Syria, the president drew the red line in the sand, and then it was crossed with WMD. Nothing happened. We led from behind. Now the Jordanians are leading airstrikes against ISIS targets in Syria. Once again, we're leading from behind. At what point will America take its traditional role as the leader and not someone following? Because when we follow and there's a vacuum, all kinds of evildoers take its role. How much blame do you give to Obama for his lack of leadership, whether it's in Libya, Egypt, Syria, or Iraq? How much blame does Obama's foreign policy get? And if he gets a lot of blame, Congressman, how much blame do you give to Hillary Rodham Clinton, who wants to take her foreign policy success as Secretary of State and translate that to the Oval Office?
Well, that concerns me as well. It's easy to claim victories when the world's burning around you. I don't quite get that, but that's what we're seeing. People expect America to lead. Our allies around the world expect us to lead. I look at America differently. I look at America as a place of divine intervention, not only for those who have come here to live and have established this great country, but to be a voice of reason in the world and a chance and an opportunity for people and for people of other countries to live safely as well, because of our leadership, and we're not seeing that.
Before I talk about Obamacare, there's going to be a vote in the Congress at some point once again to repeal Obamacare, and as a doctor, you have great information on that. The last few days, Putin, who's been called, I guess, mentally ill by certain Secretary of State or Defense reports. There's a report out there that Putin is suffering from some sort of mental illness or defect, which is sad if it's true. But right now, Ukraine could be the situation that is the spark that allows a Russian invasion of Eastern Europe and maybe Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. As an American, when I look around the world, Congressman, I see problems in Libya. I see problems in North Korea. I see terrible problems in Ukraine and in the Middle East. And nothing's more serious than the Russian bear is loose. The more his economy is decimated because of their economic policies, the more Putin's going to use the idea of the greater Russian Empire to rally the troops with war, which is like a wag the dog philosophy. It's a terrible circumstance. How would you seek to resolve the Ukrainian conflict, which could envelop the entire world in the next several months?
Well, for one, there again, you have a nation that's willing to fight for itself and is asking for help. The president of the Ukraine addressed Congress, and we had his entire written speech. And it was interesting at one point because one paragraph he quoted the president where the President Obama had come out and said he was going to support us and we're not going to stand for this and we're going to help Ukraine. And he took that part out. It was in the written part, and he didn't say it. He was going to thank him for that, but he didn't say it. But what he did say is we need more than MREs and blankets.
Yeah.
And, we can't be expected to be everywhere in the world. I get that. But we have got to continue in our foreign policy. What we used to do is build relationships with nations and allow them to sustain on their own as best they can and help in ways that we can. But we can't be everywhere, but we can certainly bring people up to speed. I've had the opportunity to travel to Africa. I was in Chad. They were very thrilled with how America was helping them build up their military so they could take care of their own problems as far as terrorism.
Well, nobody wants American ground forces and like a ground large army of 200,000 strong, 180,000 strong back in Iraq. But the Kurds are willing to do the work if we give them the armaments. There are elements in and around Jordan that will do the work if we give them the ability. We could have armed the rebels in Syria to fight ISIS. We've done none of that. Nobody wants to see American soldiers killed and some murdered on the battlefields of Fallujah again. But we have the capability to have force multipliers by having Kurds and others act as the ground troops. But this president from Acorn, this president from the mean streets of Chicago, this president who's a community organizer, always wants to lead from behind and not lead from the front. Now, before we move on to Obamacare, Gallup CEO and Chairman Jim Clifton. Gallup is not exactly a right or left-wing publication. It is simply a polling group. He's given several interviews the last few nights in which he has said that, doubling down on his comments, that the misleading Obama unemployment rate is 5.6%. He says the number of full-time jobs in this country as a percentage of the total population is the lowest in American history. That we lost about 13 million jobs in the Great Recession. Only 3 million have come back. We're 10 million jobs light. So the president gave a speech before you about 3 weeks ago in which he said, we have recovered. Life is good. I'm responsible. But in reality, we have the lowest labor participation rate in American history. Can you believe that?
I can believe it. Willie, the longer I'm here, the more I realize that this is a person that will come out and he thinks if he says something, therefore it is. And unfortunately, a lot of people just go right along with it. And so that's the misleading part. I think most people saw through the last State of the Union. I mean, the State of the Union address has become, for many, just a wish list. But he talked about middle-class economics, and actually his policies have given more to the very wealthy and have taken away from the middle class. They're actually doing worse under his policies. And there are less people working full-time, and, you're finding that. That's the nature of business. These are things that we knew all along. These are things that we have said. When it came to Obamacare, I said, unfortunately, it won't take a news story for people to start to understand the effects of that on their economic situation and their health care situation because they're going to be living it, and that's what we're seeing happen. I actually had a nurse last week who 2.5 years ago came to me to do a report on Obamacare, and she was all for it, couldn't understand why I wasn't. I gave her all the reasons. I saw her last week, and she said, for 2 years I've been hoping to run into you to apologize.
Wow, and the thing is, the president says the right words. His policies cause the opposite of what he intends. He says the right words, so for the uninitiated, for the uninformed, for the Kim Kardashian voter, okay, the president says the right things. But his policies are the opposite of what he intends because his policies don't work.
Well, if we do the opposite, we might be in good shape, right? I read an article recently that brought up that very point, and they used the idea of extending unemployment benefits. He said the nation was going to fall apart and people would be starving and everything else was going to happen. And instead, to the tune of about 246,000 people a month went back to work.
Yeah. I mean, the president says one thing, but his policies cause another. And so the middle class has got to understand Obamonomics means the rich get richer and the middle class gets poorer. And that's the name of that tune. And that's the only way we can do it. The rich get richer under Obama and the middle class gets poorer. Now, lastly, would you vote to rescind completely Obamacare?
Well, I would, and I'm geared up, and we have a replacement plan in place. At least the Doctors Caucus did, and the Republican Study Committee did, and we're going to expand upon that within the various committees. The bill we voted on this week does repeal it. That passed in the House, but it also gave 180 days to establish an alternative plan. And that's really what we have to present to the American people in a more formal way than we've been doing it. The president for years has said, well, you don't have a plan. Well, we do. You just haven't paid attention to it. So we have to make that more formal. And that's a responsibility on us. And I think we can do it. I can go in the details of that at some time, but there are a lot of things that will make health care more accessible and more affordable to the American people.
Now, lastly, Brad Wenstrup, you're kind of a citizen legislator. That is, you're a normal guy. You're like a doctor, a veteran, still in the military, in Congress. Don't things about Congress really upset you?
Oh, this is logistically, it's one of the toughest jobs I've ever had, And the other thing is, when I'm in my uniform, people trust me. When I'm in my scrubs or white coat, people trust me. That goes away up here, and deservedly so, I think, in a lot of ways. People have a lot of reasons to distrust their government. But, I would say that in my time here, considering the mechanics of how Congress works, I feel that I've had some positive influence and effect, but not in the same way that I've done in other jobs where the results are more immediate.
Well, Brad, you had to feel when Iraq was lost, when you stood up and said, wait a minute. In 2011, the war was won by any objective measurement. Al-Qaeda messages indicated, brothers and sisters, don't go to Iraq. It is over. The president said we won. Bush said we won. Obama said we won. After we won, Obama lost Iraq. Now, the media won't say that, but I just did, because the media is invested in this guy's success, irrespective of reality. Obama lost Iraq, just like he lost the medical care in this country, and just like if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, just like if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Every policy of Obama of any significance we have lost as the American people. The media won't cover it as such because it's politically incorrect. Or Dr. Brad Wenstrup, Congressman Brad Wenstrup, we got to run. May you continue to represent the people of Ohio and this nation quite well, and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Willie. It's a pleasure to be with you.
You're a great American. Let's continue.